according to Sir Beloy, no, na affected ko no ang iyang love life. I don't know how it affected for a senior but very, very expert member of our faculty. So in other words, everything has changed. The changing game of education is ushering in a new reality. And everybody calls that as the new normal. And we don't have to explain that. There are many things that you really understand about the new normal. But what is very sure about it is that we are trying to thrive in this new normal that we are in. And what is also very motivating for us in our CNU family is our ability to really commit ourselves, our motivation to be able to learn, relearn, and unlearn in these very, very volatile times. Because for all you know, our dear colleagues, when we decide to open our school year by September, we can just open it, but we will not be allowing anybody physically to come to the university. And so we have to prepare for that. Whether we like it or not, we have to embrace the flexible learning and teaching design that our university will adopt to make sure that there is what you call learning continuity. And we are bound by duty as government employees to make sure that even when situations might not allow it, we may, and we really will find a way so that our learners will still learn and government will still continue to give services in the areas of instruction, even research, and even extension. So we are really, really thankful for the initiative of the Vice President and the deans and the campus directors and all the discipline chairs. I know that our speaker will be properly introduced later on, but let me thank him for being very proactive and the next speakers for our next webinar sessions. They are our experts and they are very willing to help us. Remember, nobody has the monopoly of knowledge. In this very unchanging time, we have to learn, we have to relearn, and we have to unlearn to make sure that learning continuity is really facilitated, to make sure that the outcomes expected of the different courses in our programs will be acquired by our students, and to make sure that there is resiliency, safety, and inclusivity as we develop and as we deliver our instructional materials. So with this, my CNU family, I would like to formally open this series of scholarly activities that would enhance all our capacities to meet the challenges of a flexible learning solution that we all desire and we all would like to move forward in this unchanging times. So everyone, welcome, and I formally open this webinar sessions from today till the last and the fourth webinar. Maayong hapon kanatong tanan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dayagbil and the rest of the CNU faculty members and administrators for quickly responding to the need to recreate education amidst this pandemic. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without much further ado, let me call in our webinar facilitator for today, who will first share with us an introduction on what our invited speaker will explain. She has a PhD in organizational psychology from Macquarie University, Australia. She has a master in education, major in special education with underpinning courses in CPE and DSP on DSPED courses from Cebu Technological University. She has a Master of Arts in Psychology, major in Industrial Organizational Psychology. She also has a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Mindanao State University, Iligan Institute of Technology, and she graduated cum laude. A licensed secondary teacher, a user of Edmodo and Macquarie University's iLearn LMS powered by Moodle, an enthusiastic learner or practitioner of FLEXI learning, having a certificate in effective virtual classroom from Philippine Society for Talent Development, and is on ongoing training for certificate in instructional design for e-learning from Udemy, an online learning platform. She is also a trainer, a facilitator on topics including emotional intelligence, gender sensitivity, mental conditioning, goal setting, personality development, and stress management, among others. Her research interests are broadly in organizational and cognitive psychology and education, and she also has published in high-impact journals in Elsevier and in Taylor and Francis. At present, she is the chair of the Department of Psychology. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Eva Marie GACASAN.
Okay, so once again, good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to this webinar entitled Learning and Approach to Module Development. So I'll just mention that I am wearing two hats this afternoon. One, as a speaker, I'll be a speaker first, and then I'll take the role later of being a facilitator. So I could not refuse Sir Ray when he asked me to present the first part. So I would be happy really to do that and to help our community. Or alternatively, Sir Omar can just tell us the result.
How about that?
What did the majority say?
Share results.
Okay, great. So, okay. So I think 100% actually participated. So I'm curious and interested to see what is out there. Okay. So that is really revealing. This is really a revealing result, right? And a very helpful input to our university as well, that training is really necessary for the many of us. So thank you very much for that, Sir Omar. So our poll actually relates to the feeling of learning a task. So when we are still learning a new skill, at first we might just be curious about it. We might feel neutral. And then when we know a little more about it, but we don't have yet the tools, we might feel stressed out. And then when we have already learned some skills, then we can sit back and relax. And then if we have really mastered it, then we fly like Superman. But of course, it's not going to be linear, because there are times when we feel like we are already comfortable, but we have heard of some new systems that makes us feel nervous again. Okay. So what comes to your mind when you hear flexi learning? I want this to be an interactive activity still. Okay, so what comes to your mind when you hear flexi learning? Can you please type your answer in the chat box? So never mind if you will be sharing answers with others. If you see some duplicates, that's expected. Okay, can I see your answers in the chat box? What comes to your mind when you hear the words flexi learning? Okay, flexi learning, it's asynchronous, asynchronous, somebody said, self-directed learning, modular, using the different modalities, learning media. Okay. Just continue answering, okay? Because I'm really happy to see your answers, your responses. Okay, so flexi learning also goes by various names or labels, such as blended learning, flipped learning, online learning, e-learning, distance education, disaggregated learning, distributed learning, hybrid learning. And of course, there's the similarity there, that there is a component that is non-traditional. And then, of course, there is the distinction of the terms depending on the kind of blend, as well as the level of flexibility involved. Okay. So what is flexible learning? I think the best way to understand this is if we picture out a learning continuum or a spectrum. At one end is the traditional classroom that we are all products of. So this can be traced from the early Greek period, okay? And then at the other end is the non-traditional, so we also call this as remote, education, distance learning. Okay, that only started in the later half of the previous, or in the last century. So probably you have heard of course correspondence, and that's where it started. Okay. Now, why is flexible learning becoming popular? Okay, why is it becoming popular? Because as what Dr. Dayagbil said earlier, that it offers solutions to our teaching and learning problems or issues. And I like Judge Commissioner Prospero de Vera III's definition of what flexible learning is. He actually corrected the use of online education. He said that flexible learning is the more appropriate term. It's broader, it's more comprehensive, and it actually encompasses online education. So flexible learning focuses on the design and delivery of programs, courses, and learning interventions that address learners' unique needs in terms of pace, place, process, and products of learning. And then he also further went on to say that it uses digital and non-digital technology and does not necessarily require connectivity. And I actually like it. And I like his description because he actually aims to capture the essence of the educational landscape in the Philippines, where the reality is there is the lack of technological resources, lack of access to this technology. So that is why when we say remote or online learning, so it's actually giving us a choice between asynchronous and synchronous learning. So which means that a student does not necessarily have to be connected to internet or Wi-Fi all the time. Okay. So asynchronous versus synchronous learning, let's differentiate the two. So when we say asynchronous learning, it actually allows the learners to learn at their own pace. The instructors just provide materials, lectures, tests, and assignments beforehand that can be accessed at any time. But there is still the deadline. So overall, students are free to contribute whenever they choose. So what are the media that we use in asynchronous learning? We can use email. We can also use virtual libraries that we can put up in our LMS. But no concern, no worry if you don't have LMS yet, because virtual libraries, you can have it in your USB. You just prepare everything that's like good for 1 month of not seeing each other with your class or with your students. And then there's discussion boards, there's social networking. Now, what about synchronous learning? So synchronous learning requires real-time interaction between students and instructors. So they have to be online at the same time to listen to partake in lectures, discussions, presentations. So, it's expected that students really participate on these activities. So what are the media that we use for synchronous learning? We have talk. We also have telephone. Like for example, there are some teachers who actually called their students just to listen to their answers to their essays, just because they don't have internet connectivity. There's also live podcast, streaming, and there's also video conferencing, just like what we are doing. So that is the distinction between asynchronous versus synchronous learning. Okay, now what does flexible learning look like? So I hope that those who are very familiar already with the format will just indulge us, because the reality is that we have a broad level of knowledge and experience in our with our participants. Okay, so just indulge us. So I am presenting here just the 4 common formats for flexible learning. So we have station rotation and lab rotation. They're kind of the same, but for station rotation, the students stay in one classroom, but there are collapsible walls for the different stations. Station for online instruction, teacher-led instruction, for collaborative activities, and stations. So the students, the different groups of students will just rotate within a day in that particular classroom. Whereas for a lab rotation, students do rotate, but not within the classroom, but in different locations in schools. So they go to venues for their lectures in math, in science, in social studies. But the distinctive feature of lab rotation is the presence of a computer lab. And the computer lab is very important in this model because the output of the students in the computer lab would inform their instruction, their discussion in their different subjects. So that's for lab rotation. So I want you to contextualize also while listening to me, what learning format would you be able to organize for next semester? So think of your classes, think of your subjects. Okay? Now there's flipped classroom. So it's actually a reversal of traditional activities and traditional traditional environments. So in a flipped classroom, students do their homework and practice in school, whereas at home, they learn the primary contents of their subject. And then in Flex, so there's this big central lab, and then there are also different stations. But by the way, Flex is also known as individual rotation because unlike the station rotation wherein students are really required to hover to the different stations, in Flex or in individual rotation, they have the freedom to go to where they want to go, the station that they feel like going. But the teacher can decide, can pull students to go to the group having intervention or seminar or direct instruction or for group projects. So we can see, we can see different blends. Actually, there are still a lot out there. There's still a lot out there. So you can really use your creativity later on. So for Naido, he said that flexible learning includes choices in relation to entry and exit points, selection of learning activities, assessment tasks, and educational resources. Now, before beginning module development, okay, what role, before we even think of developing our module, it is important that we make a reassessment of what's going to be my role in a flexi learning environment. Okay, so I'll give you a moment, and perhaps in the chat box, again, I would appreciate that while you are reflecting, you are also typing your answer. So I know it's quite long, but just use numbers instead. So at the top, so instructional designer would be 1, and then moving to the right would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then bottom is 6, and then number 10 will be the image at the right, or 10. Okay, so before beginning module development, what role do I play in flexi learning? So let me see your answers. Okay, 1, 3, instructional designer. Many really say instructional designer. There are also who said 3. There are a lot who also says 3, and then 1, 3, 1, 3. Okay, 4.
Hi, Ma'am Ev. Di ba na-pull, Ana?
No, sir. Wala pa to. I will tell you. Oh.
Okay, Ma'am.
Okay. Sige. Okay, so thank you very much for your answer. Thank you very much. Okay, so actually, if we think about it, in a flexi learning environment, we'll really be wearing a lot of hats. Probably all of these 10, but no pressure. No, you will only perform what is within your capacity. Pero in a flexi learning environment, murag kiligid siya tanan, would be required. We are instructional curriculum designers. We must have knowledge of new science of learning, how students learn. We must be good facilitators, content coach, subject expert, subject matter expert, master communicator, so on and so forth. Now, let us compare our role in flexi learning and then our role, in traditional classroom. Okay, in traditional classroom, unsa man sad that. Try to compare your answer earlier and your answer now. Oops. Sorry. We're not having that poll yet. Oh, this time in the traditional classroom. Again, just provide the number. Ingon si Ma'am Vinchita, when you are an instructional designer, you must have these attributes. I think that she's referring to all. Okay, 1, 4, 3, okay. 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 Okay, so just continue for those who have not typed in yet your answer. Okay, no one is preventing you to still catch up. Okay. So again, if we think about it, even in traditional classroom, no, kasagaran or halustanan, all of this would play out. No, all of these roles will play out. Okay. Now, okay, Sir Omar. Okay. But before Sir Omar would push the poll, let me just read this second poll. So let's make a self-assessment. So what are my strengths and what areas can I still develop as we are preparing for the new normal? Okay, so let us reassess our strengths and then what can I develop? Sir Omar, can you please help me with our survey? So you can choose 3, maximum of 3 for every question. Actually, just modify the question. What particular role or roles are my greatest strengths? So you can take up to 3 of that. And then the second question, which role could be further developed? Again, you can choose up to 3. So just a few seconds more, perhaps. And Sir Omar, I think that we are good. But please check the turnout of the
43% pa, ma'am, ang voted.
Oh, pila pa, sir?
45% voted.
Okay, just 45%. Okay. No rush. So what particular role or roles are my greatest strength? Pick 3 at most. And then which role could be further developed?
%56 voted.
Okay. So perhaps just 30 seconds more.
60% voted.
Okay. Number is climbing, so okay, that's good.
62% voted.
Okay. So it's just even 1 would be fine for each question.
64%.
Okay.
%67 voted.
Okay.
%70 voted.
Okay. So authentic person, I just like to describe this or explain this a little bit, that this particular role or quality is very important, whether online or offline, because students really appreciate the authenticity of their teachers. So when they know that their teacher is becoming vulnerable and just getting real with them, these kinds of teachers really connect well with students. And then we have social leader. These are those who can socially influence their class, their students. Master administrator, paperworks, platform and technology specialist, your use of technology, visual designer, being graphic artist. Okay, sir.
74% voted, ma'am.
Okay,
Siguro,
I think that's already good. Okay, we're already
also
on that.
the result.
And then just push the result now. Okay, so in terms of what particular role or roles are my greatest strength, 83% said that they're very good as facilitators. Oh, that's really nice. Facilitator, facilitating skills. They're also good as instructional designers. Okay, and the next one is as content coach or subject matter expert. Okay, now what about for roles that could be further developed? I think our school heads and officials would also want to take note. Okay, many said that they want to develop in the area of platform and technology, visual designing, okay, and even instructional design. Okay, and that is what our webinar is all about this afternoon. So help us in instructional design. So thank you very much for your answers. So we are tasked with module development that is really inevitable. Somehow we know that we will really be embarking on flexible learning. We just didn't know that it would be this soon, right? Because of the twist of events, because of COVID. No, the crisis made us embrace or need to embrace this new learning design much faster than we thought. So if we are going to create a module, we have to check what's in our toolbox, right? Okay, so what tools are there? So do we have the necessary tools, particularly conceptual tools, which means theoretical guides, we know theoretical basis of what we are doing, and then technical tools, technical know-how, and then do we also have the practical tools or the physical tools, learning technologies? Okay, so I really commend our university for providing us with a holistic training. So we start off with this webinar that will equip the CNU teaching community with the general framework, the theoretical guide, and then the succeeding seminars will help us with our technical tools and with our physical tools. So you will have your hands-on practical experience with LMS, with making contents, with making your storyboards, scripting later on. Okay. And then I just be very quick with this. Instructional design models, I just need to include this because this is needed, right? Instructional design model is needed when we are in the task of crafting our curriculum or instructional design. So we must have the big picture in mind, what is involved in course or module development. So many, if not all, are familiar with the ADDIE model. Okay, so it stands for the following: analyze, design, develop, implement, evaluate. So analyze is we have to think first of our target audience, our students, their learning characteristics, their learning needs, what are our learning goals for them, the available resources, and then we design, we make a blueprint okay, out of what of these things that we have in mind, put them in paper, and then we start with developing, which means organizing and assembling these resources, these media, okay? So this is also known as pilot testing. This is also where pilot testing would come in. And then I actually lost my screen. Okay. Okay. And then implement is when we already roll out and observe how our course is doing, and then we evaluate. But evaluate is concurrent with the rest of the phases. So we're supposed to analyze and evaluate at the same time, design and evaluate at the same time, develop and evaluate at the same time, and implement and evaluate at the same time. Now, there are criticisms of ADDIE. That is why some are leaving ADDIE for SAM. And SAM refers to successive approximation model, because what ADDIE misses out, SAM addresses. And what are these? In reality, when you design a module, so it's not going to be linear, just like the process that ADDIE provided us. So in reality, it's going to be non-linear. Like we could be doing different phases at the same time. What I also like about successive approximation model is that it has a leeway for mistakes, that mistakes are okay, and expected at the different phases. And it goes by iterative process. The different phases go by iterative process. So that is why with SAM, there is a better output, because there is the testing, there's alpha testing, beta testing, up to gold standard. So when you say alpha testing, when you're done with the course module, then you check the technicalities, are there technical errors? And the beta testing, sorry, is when you pilot test this with subject matter experts, with your target audience, until you're happy, no? Okay, until you're happy that you can say, okay, this is already good. Okay, this is the gold standard for now. Okay, and then learning theories. Again, when we are crafting our module, so in our arsenal, we must have these learning theories. So I'll just breeze through these different schools of thought. Okay, so we have behaviorism, constructivism, and cognitivism. They have a different way of looking at learning. Like, for example, for behaviorism, they see learning as a behavior change. If there is no change in behavior, then there is no learning that takes place. So behaviorism answers for us how habit is formed, like through mechanisms involving classical conditioning, operant conditioning, okay? And then constructivism is telling us that learning is a complex interactive social phenomena between teachers and students. There's such thing as zone of proximal development, okay, that we actually observe in our practice. And it's really so satisfying, right? When a student is about to give up, but because of our push, they're able to overcome their challenges. So the zone of proximal development operates through the scaffolding mechanism or the help of more knowledgeable others. And then constructivism puts value or great emphasis on prior experience, on experiential learning, and stages of cognitive development. Okay. And then cognitivism has become a major learning theory, especially now. Why? Because of the empirical and scientific evidences that they are able to produce. So they likened the brain as a computer, and they actually react from the SR model of behaviorism, stating that learning occurs in what is in between stimulus and response. So they are concerned with the cognitive processes in response to stimulus. So what are these cognitive processes? Remembering, learning, thinking, analyzing, and etc. And for And it's also to the cognitivists that we owe our understanding of information processing, that it is counterintuitive if we force or push great amounts of materials to our students and expect that they will deposit that in their long-term memory in just a few hours' time, because that is not doable. So information processing is telling us how materials solidify, from sensory processing to short-term memory to long-term memory. So anyway, as what I've said, cognitivism is very popular now, and they have so much respect of their peers because of the evidences that they provide. No, because of the developments of science and technology, we have already a lot of inventions right now that can demonstrate the link between the brain, the workings of the brain, and cognitive processes. Okay. And then, of course, we have Bloom's taxonomy and Gagné's 9 events of instruction. No, these are also important, when we are crafting our module. So I wouldn't dwell so much on this because these are fundamental and essential readings. Okay, knowledge of every teacher. And Bloom's taxonomy, di ba? Our TOS, nagyutaan eh, no? Every item would be appraised based on the type of thinking skills that is involved. Okay. Now, after presenting those theories, so may daghanang theory, so there is actually no single theory that can account for learning, much more for flexi learning, which is just very new. But I share with your sentiment, if we are going to start with our course development, can you just make it simpler for us? Can you just give us an integrated model that already has everything, that can show us all the elements that we need to manage and to focus on in flexi learning? Okay, so we share that interest, no? And if you have known, it was actually Sir Ray who was asked by the school to first come up with this integrated model, a framework that can help in course development. But I also joined in out of really interest, because this is really something new, and it's really just nice to document our learning as well, as a country, because diba, flexi learning is not widely implemented in our educational system. So anyway, our interest, my and Sir Ray's interest, in coming up with a general framework for flexi learning led us to look into the literature. Okay, what are available out there? And there aren't too many. There aren't too many. Again, because of the infancy of the field. Okay, pero ang among nakita is that those very good models focus on learning context. Pero kami, we want to also highlight, we want to include in the framework student learning outcomes, or the student factor, which is another key element, or if not the most important element, in the learning environment. Okay, so in the model, you can see, okay, the learning context and student learning outcomes. And we have considered the works of Teo and Williams and Pisciano, okay, because they are really well structured. So they've identified, and this is very, very helpful for us, okay, when we consider our new normal, our flexi learning classrooms in August, in the coming semester. So according to Teo and Williams, that there are sub-environments that we have to consider in online learning. That's also the same idea of Pisciano. So there's instructive environment. So instructive environment just is synonymous, or is it refers to content and instructional delivery. So do we want, or we decide the degree of face-to-face interactions as well as online, and then if we are going to use LMS or CMS, and then determine the appropriate media And then, or RLOs. Now, I just want to make mention of RLOs, or reusable learning object. Reusable learning objects, because we already have this, but they're just scattered, right, in our computer in different files. So it would be more effective and more efficient if we store them in an LMS, or in, just in one storage. Okay, so we have to think of sustainability of our materials, that they can still be usable down the line in the next school year. Of course, it's really commonsensical that we have to review.
Kaya ho kondo na, gamake up pa kami.
Okay. So, okay. So thank you very much for muting the phone. Okay. So, yeah, RLOs, what are examples of these media, videos, audios, simulations? So if they're still good, then we keep them. If not, we modify them or discard them. Okay, and instructive environment would also be a decision between asynchronous and synchronous learning. And then in a FLEXI learning environment, we also have to think of situated environment. So this is the notion that our knowledge must be applied in the context and culture of the learner. Provide them with authentic activities that are similar to the unstructured real world, or provide them with simulated activities. And then we have constructive environment. So this is also based from the ideas of constructivism, that we have to take advantage of the vast collection of experiences of the learners, okay? Because that's also more meaningful for them if they get to use their experiences. And then supportive environment, okay, both again in online and offline or campus-based. Okay, so what are the 3 types of support that we can give? Performance support, which comes in the form of tools that allow our learners to perform certain tasks. So we can provide them perhaps tables, formula, apps, or even printed materials. No? And then we also provide cognitive support in the form of coaching, mentoring. No? Pinaka-importante na ba kayo karong panahon na, no? Coaching, mentoring, no? Because many are actually also stressed. No, we also have to think of the mental health concerns of our students, their well-being, and then technical support. So because we are using, no, I am seeing that in the school opening, we would still be availing of these free online platforms, no. So definitely, we could not have a very good support from them. So expect, and I think that this is also the experience of the many of us, no, nga, if students experience technical issue with their LMS, so the first point of contact for them. And then of course, there are some that are really way beyond us. So what do you do with that? So just like my experience with Edmodo last month, I think because of the traffic, no? There are technical glitches and bugs, and my students complained to me, and of course I have very limited ICT knowledge, so I just troubleshoot their problem manually. No, but we expect really to provide technical support. And then communicative environment, no? So online presence is very important, no? Online presence is very important, and it's actually doable and feasible, especially if you are a keen teacher, that perhaps you can provide activities wherein even when people are remote, even when students are remote, they don't really feel that they are like really distant from other learners. Okay, so make online environment or the remote environment a community of inquiry, a community of practice. And then collaborative environment, so we can, the online platform should not deter us from giving them group projects, because there are already a lot of advancements in technology right now, wherein these work teams can engage through chat, through video conferencing, through sharing docs, projects in the cloud, and they can also do wiki. Okay, so wiki is collaborative editing, okay, project. And the last is, and the last is evaluative environment. So last but not the least, we know how important evaluative environment is. And the same as in traditional classroom, we can also do this in the online platform. So you can put up online quizzes, you can require uploading of school requirements, e-portfolio, video presentations, discussion boards, physical outputs. And then what is good with online assessment, it provides us with learning analytics that just automatically we can see the performance of individual and the group, no, of individuals and group. And then aside from learning analytics, no, online assessment is also good because it makes our assessment activities more accessible and more permanent, including our assessment records. Okay. So that's for the learning context. Now I would like to bring your focus to the KMUP model. So this was initially conceived by Sir INOCIAN, and again, I just jumped in to enhance. So what I like about the KMUP model is looking at student learning outcomes, but in a very simplified way. Okay, because if you think of Bloom, no, I think just very few can actually memorize in perfect order, right? The hierarchy. Okay. So what we did with the KMUP model is to contextualize it pa, to make it easy for recall, no? Okay, so what should be the focus in learning? It's really learning outcomes, diba? We learned that all these years in CNU because we have the abundance of training of OBE, no? So because learning outcomes, that's really the goal of learning activity, of the learning teaching process. Okay, so instead of remembering those cognitive processes, no? Okay, so here in this model, no, we're really after the concrete outcomes. So what happens if students learn? Okay, what do they look like? So they look like knowledge, no? Mga nakatunan. Okay, just go to the next one. So the KMUP model focuses on student learning outcomes, knowledge, or mga katunon, definition, facts, figures, concepts, theories, and principles. So these are really basic when we are learning a subject matter. And then mastery, or mga naantiguhan. So as we have sufficient practice, we also advance in the following: cognitive, fine motor, gross, reading, writing, speaking, numerical, manual, visual, spatial, and other skills. And then there's understanding and reflections, or mga pagsabot and pamalandong. No? So this is the student being able to demonstrate derivations of ideas, no? Abstractions, concept development, forming generalizations, problem solving, making inferences and predictions. And lastly, no, a concrete output of learning is our products and performances. So, okay, they can be in the form of portfolio, brochures, projects, compositions, experimentations, and executions. So, okay. So the model that we conceptualize also is based on underpinning principles. So when we design our course, we must also take into consideration, okay, these theoretical underpinnings. Okay, learning must be holistic and stimulating. So we got this from brain-based theory, that we have to stimulate both the rational and the thinking part of the brain, as well as the emotional and the feeling part of the brain. Okay, and then learning must be meaningful and applied. So we find parallelism in the KMUP model with the model of Bernice McCarthy. So he said that learning can be seen as concepts, skills, meaning, and adaptation. But we bring it further by demonstrating that we concrete outcomes. So concepts when learned become knowledge, and skills when they are fully developed became mastery. Meaning, when they are applied, can be seen in students' reflections. And then adaptation, no, can be seen concretely in the form of products and performances. Okay. And then learning takes into account the cognitive processes, capacities of learners. Okay. So I just wouldn't explain this na lang, no? But because the past model is quite broad to explain, so it's just important that we take into consideration the cognitive capacity of students when they learn. And then learning is, of course, driven by learning outcomes. So as we know, it's really just cyclical. No? We first start with the learning outcomes because the learning outcomes inform our learning objectives. And our learning objectives inform us how we are going to create a scaffolding environment. And then lastly, learning considers andragogy and pedagogy. So andragogy is from the work of Malcolm Knowles. He defined andragogy as the art and science of adult learning. So adults learn differently than young learners. And we have to take consideration of these. Okay, so adult learners are more independent learners. They're into applying immediately what they learn. That is why they are more problem focused and the like. Okay. So let me just go back to the underpinning principles of the integrated model that we presented. Learning must be holistic and stimulating. Learning must be meaningful and applied. Learning takes into account the cognitive processes, capacities of learners. Learning is driven by learning outcomes. Learning considers andragogy and pedagogy. Okay, so let's go back to our model. Okay, there are two things that we're going to focus on as we make our modules. Let's focus on the learning context and student learning outcomes. And probably you're asking, but where is the teacher there? So the teacher makes all of this happen. The teacher is the co-creator. The teacher is the creator of the sub-environments. And you can also see the influence of the teacher in the students' learning outcomes. Okay, so I'm down with my 2 slides. I'll give you this scenario. So in the assessment that you gave when school opened in August, no, you saw that there is this one student who's able to finish the task in half the time, and he also got the perfect answer. So what feedback are you going to give to the student? 1, great job, fast and excellent work. Or the second, I am sorry, that was a very easy task. Okay, so what do you think? Well, FLEXI learning, it can go by different name, but the objective, the goal is just the same. That we, as teachers, we are in this task of stretching our students in the next level of their learning. Okay. So I hope that you have learned something with my time. So let's just go back quickly to the learning outcomes. I hope that by now we're able to define and describe flexible learning, identify the roles that we play in FLEXI learning. We're also able to identify and discuss instructional systems design models, explain learning theories, and describe an integrated flexible learning model that can be applied for module development. And if you want to go further with the readings, I have provided you the list. Okay, I'm also going to share this PowerPoint to our VPAA. And with that, I say thank you very much for the time and listening to me.